We have time for a few questions. All right, let's go there.
I got two questions. One is the acid rain issue with the marble, and the second issue is some of the dates that are fixed to the surrounding block. There's controversy that a couple of the dates are completely inaccurate, like with Washington's birth or his commission or something. Has that been addressed?
I'm just going to repeat the question for that. So the first question was regarding the acid rain issue, and then the other was the question about the accuracy of the dates that are being found.
Right. Okay. Well, as far as the acid rain or just kind of the exterior, what the conservators in general are trying to do with all of the marble is slow down any further deterioration. So if there are areas, I mean, all of the marble is going to continue to deteriorate, into the future. The goal is to keep as much original fabric on site as possible. I mean, very little actual pieces are going to be taken off because that's just not what we want to do. So, but if there are areas like, say, if the conservator feels like his face is eroding a little too quickly or something, to think about some kind of wash or something that could be put on top of it, which would slow down any natural erosion. The inscriptions, there are 8 inscriptions on the base of the monument. They were part of Mills's original design for his very tall, crazy column, was really kind of a narrative of the history of Washington's life and the major events. They're like when he was born and died, when he took office, when he resigned to Mount Vernon, things like that. And there is been, for the past many 30 or 40 years, it's been pointed out that I think it's when he took the presidency is thought to be an incorrect date. I was looking into that just recently. Actually, those inscriptions were done by Robert Gilmore Jr., who I talked about a minute ago, with President John Quincy Adams. He corresponded with John Quincy Adams about what are the 8 most important things in Washington's life that we should talk about. And John Quincy Adams concurred with the 8 that they were using, but helped with the wording. And that is the date that they chose to represent when he took the presidency. And they kind of understood that. And it's very complicated about when he was actually voted in and selected and all these kind of stuff. We have no plans to change that date. It's been there since 1837, I think. But it's kind of an interesting teaching moment about how they perceived when his presidency began in the 1830s. I mean, that's the date they put on it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
We were very fortunate that...
Can I read the question really quick?
Yep.
The question was whether or not the earthquake a few years ago affected the monument.
The earthquake did not affect our monument, which we were very fortunate for. I think there's a little humorous story that you may or may not know that Robert Mills and Benjamin Henry Latrobe did not get along well. I don't think Benjamin Henry Latrobe got along well with anybody, but Mills was probably, wherever he is, having a little chuckle that Latrobe's basilica actually suffered earthquake damage and his column did not. But we'll have to, if we ever meet up with him, we'll have to ask the question.
This is very expensive to do. Can you talk a little bit about where you found money and who's supporting the effort?
Sure. The question was sort of how the project is getting funded.
Right. The project costs for the restoration are about $5.5 million. The Conservancy's raised all this money from various sources. We have major support from the state of Maryland, which is great because this really is, if you go to the monument, you'll see that it says to George Washington by the state of Maryland. This is thought to be not just Baltimore's memorial to Washington, but the state of Maryland. The city of Baltimore has contributed a bond bill, and then we've raised over $2 million just for this project privately from individuals and foundations and businesses in Baltimore.
I think we have time for one more question. Yes.
Okay, so there are 3 Washington monuments in the U.S. and 2 are in Maryland. All 3 are kind of in Maryland.
They are.
D.C.
Uh-huh.
So tell me about the relationship with Boonesboro Monument, because people don't talk about that.
So the question was sort of what the relationship is between the Boonesboro Washington Monument and then the one here that we're talking about.
Right. Well, You are right, actually, because of course Washington, D.C., the part that is still Washington, was part of Maryland when it was originally made. So all of the Washington monuments, there are 3 in Maryland, really. The Boonesboro, so Robert Mills, who designed our monument, later designed the Washington Monument in Washington several decades after ours was completed. The Boonesboro Monument, I don't know if you all have heard about that one. I think it was in 1827 that citizens of the city kind of went up a hillside and all gathered a bunch of stones, and they built this kind of 30 to 40 foot tall, I call it kind of, it looks like a pickle jar, and then had a party and then went home. They like to claim that it was the first monument to George Washington completed. That's debatable. Ours was well advanced. I said by 1828, actually by 27 when they built that, ours was done except for the statue on top. So I mean, there was a significant thing here to come and look at. But importantly, what is out there in Boonesboro at this you'll have to Google it. Was largely rebuilt in the 1930s. It had crumbled quite, I think, several times. And so what is there is maybe 1/3 of what was there originally, and then 2/3 what was rebuilt in the 20th century. So it's another first of its kind, and we always say of our monument that it was the first monument begun to George Washington. That is irrefutable.
Well, thank you again.